Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Usman Parang Saparitan Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your association and attendance as we continue Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 15. Today we're going to be covering the first 10 verses. Pandavas retire timely. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Prem Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piyusham Sarva Vedeka Satpala Sarva Siddhantaratnadya Sarva Loka Tritpradam Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kali Dvando Didaritya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna, who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pathaya Premavashasharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you unattains transcendental bliss, for your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madhaka Bandho Mat Sangim Mad Guru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Marananda Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadahin Atini Chochataraka Anamucha Kada Chinmam Premna Ritkatiospura O Srimad Bhagavatam. O give us saintliness that unsaintly, uplift the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest, Mahatma Throat, accompany pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yatonvayadi Taratas Charte Swabhigna Swarahat Tene Brahma Hidaya Dikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Chisargom Risha Dhamna Svena Sadani Rastakuakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual or will unveil. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpayusha Sabya Kalabismin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagyo Padrita. Lunar one in this age of Kali, many but short lives like quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayam Namaskrityam Narochevam Narottamam Se Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Vishnu, the supermost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaipum Saparo Dharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshaje Vaituka Pratyata Yayatma Suprasidati. The supreme occupation, dharma for all humanity, is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Chanayatisa Vairagyam Jnanam Chayadahaitakam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of God as Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires positive knowledge of detachment from the world. Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yajgnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learn the transcendentals who know the absolute truth. Paul is non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shru Shru Shrosha Dadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. Wise upon sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ryatantastoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor, the true devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta prayashu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatuttama sloke bhaktir bhavati nishtiki. By regular attendance and class in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised or transcendent of songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder chair of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Any feedback that you can remember from the last session, Canto 1, Chapter 14, verses 34 to 44. Namavati Radhika says, it was so beautiful to hear how Satyabhama was so eager to meet Draupadi, so she could hear from Draupadi on how she could better serve Krishna. Satyabhama's non-envious attitude is most admirable and very inspiring. Yes, a wonderful example of Satyabhama to hear from the devotees who have a wonderful relationship with Krishna, and naturally that relationship is based on service, and specifically Draupadi being expert in a specific field of service. Then Queen Satyabhama wanted to hear from her how to serve Krishna. And as you mentioned, this non-envious consciousness of Satyabhama was very, very exemplary. And in our case, we can also learn from those who are expert and not be envious. All devotees' intention is to serve and please Krishna. And if Krishna is pleased by a service, then naturally we want to adopt that service so that we can also please Krishna through that service. So for example, let's say Krishna loves a specific sweet that a devotee offers, and we want to also offer a sweet. So naturally, because Krishna loves that sweet, we can replicate, or we can use the same recipe, or we can follow that devotee's offering, because that pleases Krishna. We can think, okay, when I don't want to offer that, I can be better, I can offer better. Now, yes, you may be able to offer more devotion and a sweet that is even better than that devotee. But the basis is you'll only know that after you have pleased Krishna. So Satyabhama knows that, well, Draupadi is very dear to Krishna, and she's very expert at serving husbands. So she is expert at serving her husbands, and I want to also expertly serve my husband. So therefore, let me learn from her how to serve Krishna, even on a more wonderful and higher level. So she's not envious or shy or embarrassed to learn and increase her skills of devotion to offer to Krishna. So we should not also be embarrassed to learn. In fact, our system is parampara, disciplic succession. So we learn from the previous acharyas, we learn from the devotees how to serve Krishna. And on that basis, we increase, we amplify our service to Krishna. Not that there's a envious type of mentality where, nope, I'm better, I'm proud of my service and I want to offer to Krishna. Krishna sees the sentiments of how we interact with others as well, to give them the opportunity or to bring them forward. We see Srimati Radharani also in the spiritual world. She's bringing everyone to serve Krishna, even though she's the best. Krishna wants her to serve, but her consciousness is not, I'm the best and therefore everybody should be behind. No, her consciousness is, no, I should engage everyone to serve Krishna. And Krishna makes an arrangement to accept the service from Srimati Radharani and also fulfilled her desires. Then Mother Archana Siddhi says, Hare Krishna, as long as our senses are not purified, we will not be able to genuinely render devotional service purely. So daily our focus, our desire, our meditation should be, how can I purify my senses? What can I do to purify my senses? How can I engage in devotional service to purify my senses? Praying to Krishna, please purify my senses. Please purify my heart, purify my consciousness, revive my love and my devotion, my attachment to your lotus feet, so that I can become a perfect servant, perfect instrument in your service. So this is very, very important. Right now we are engaging in devotional service in practice, but real service, the real excitement, the real joy, the real adventures start when we become purified. So we should know the goal, understand the goal, be inspired by the goal, but also be inspired by the process which involves purification. So we want to become attached to purifying our senses. We should not shy away from purification, because without the purification, there is no question of entrance. Which means that whatever arrangement Krishna makes, we want to embrace it as the perfect situation for our own purification. And if we accept that, then there are less and less obstacles on the path of devotional service, because there are no more obstacles. We're seeing whatever happens in our own lives as Krishna's arrangement to purify our senses so that we can become qualified. So that is a very, very wonderful point that Srila Prabhupada brings out. Without purification of senses, there is no question. And we see in Nectar of Instruction, Vacho Vegam, Manaso Vegam, the whole Manasakroda Vegam, the whole concept of purifying our senses, controlling the urges, having, managing our urges, then engage in devotional service. In Shishastikam, Srijat Mahaprabhu says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the cleansing, the purifying process of the holy name, so that we can become servants of, or revive our eternal relationship and service to Krishna. So we see this in all aspects where we're engaging in devotional service, and we are in the washing machine of Krishna consciousness. We are getting washed. And if you're in a washing machine, you get tossed around. So like that, sometimes life may toss us around in the process of Krishna consciousness. But that tossing is there for our own purification. And we want to see it like that. It can become even more challenging if we know what's good, we know what's right, and we deviate from that. Then Krishna really turns up the heat. So we want to do what's right and follow what's right. And as far as possible, where we are conditioned to do the wrong things, we pray to Krishna to help us in that regard. But we should never break the principles or deviate from the principles or engage in irreligious principles where we know that that is not proper. Because then it's a sign to Krishna. And especially here, we're not talking about weaknesses. Right? We're talking about intentional deviations, intentional neglect, intentional disobedience, intentional embracing of vices. The Supreme Lord will turn up the heat. So we want to be cautious of that. Nalinikanta says, one is fearless when surrendered to Krishna. We can measure our surrender, how fearless we are. Yes. This quality of fear is a characteristic of the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no material fear, but fear of losing Krishna, fear of Krishna, or let's say fearing fearing where Krishna is concerned. Mother Yashoda was fearful of the protection of Krishna. Will Krishna be harmed in different ways? So her experience of fear in relation to Krishna is imbued with love. But in the material world, we can use fear as a barometer, a measure of how are we advancing. And you'll see as you progress in Krishna consciousness more and more, less and less situations cause fear. Eventually, to the extent that even if your body, your life is threatened, you are not fearful, but you take that opportunity to completely surrender and remember the Supreme Lord. So that is fearlessness. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Let us proceed. So the Pandavas retire timely. We're going to cover at least 10 verses. First 6 verses, Arjuna's strong feeling of separation from Krishna. And then we'll cover a few verses from the next section, 7 to 17. Arjuna recalls Lord Krishna's favor and protection. In relation to last chapter, we heard 10 causes of dejection. 10 causes that we can connect to when we are dejected. And this is material dejection. So, for example, if one's health is not good, then one feels dejected. If one is disrespected or neglected, one feels dejected. Somebody speaks unfriendly words, we feel dejected. We can't, give in charity as we promise, we feel dejected. So like that, these are different elements or aspects that would put us in a state of dejection. Now, what's interesting is Arjuna, Yudhishthira Maharaj asked Arjuna if these are some of the situations that have caused his dejection. But Arjuna is Krishna conscious. And if someone is Krishna conscious, then none of these dejections or aspects that causes dejections would influence him. So for example, health. Someone who is Krishna conscious will not be impacted by his health. That means his health will not cause dejection. Firstly, someone who is Krishna conscious will always look after his health. Why? Because the body is a vehicle which Krishna has given him to serve Krishna. So he knows that I'm not this body. This body is a very important vehicle. It belongs to Krishna. I need to look after it. And therefore, he will or she will do whatever is required to keep the body healthy. Now, the body cannot be perfectly, eternally kept healthy. It is impossible. The body will decline over time as the body ages. One will experience illnesses. It is just the nature of the body and time influencing the body, which the devotee knows perfectly well. So even though the body's health is declining, the devotee is not influenced by that and therefore does not become dejected. In fact, when the body declines in health, the devotee takes that as an impetus that, yes, I should use my body more and more in the service of Krishna before it gets too old. Prabhupada says we should use our youth in the service of Krishna, so that at least I've conditioned myself to serve Krishna, and as the body ages, I would have already focused and become absorbed in Krishna consciousness, which implies that health is not a cause of dejection for one who is Krishna conscious, even up to the point of death. We see Srila Prabhupada in the point, on his deathbed was completely Krishna conscious and not dejected. Then consider the second one. I'm not going to go through all, just to highlight how these are aspects that materially can cause dejection, but from a Krishna conscious perspective, no. How were you disrespected or neglected? A devotee, even if he's disrespected and neglected, does not become disturbed, because he sees it as an aspect of purification. He knows Krishna will never disrespect or neglect. He knows the pure devotees will never disrespect or neglect. So if there is an aspect of disrespect or neglect, then Krishna's made that arrangement for his own purification. He also, here we're talking about somebody who is Krishna conscious, which means a pure devotee of Krishna. A pure devotee of Krishna, his consciousness is so elevated that he feels that he is completely worthless, to the extent that that no one should offer him any respect because he's not worthy of that respect. And that he's so fallen, for someone to neglect him is actually a perfect fit. So this humility that a pure devotee has is so exalted that even if somebody tramples on him, somebody abuses him, he is not dejected because he thinks this is worthy. For example, Haridas Thakur being whipped. Haridas Thakur is thinking, yes, I deserve worse. I've been born in a Malacha family. I'm fallen due to my birth. my karma, I deserve worse. So he's not dejected. So like that, you can go through each one of these and you see how from a Krishna conscious perspective, none of these elements will cause dejection. And if we look at Arjuna's case, Arjuna was not dejected due to any of these reasons. Yet he was dejected. So the next verses, we're going to hear the cause of Arjuna's dejection. Text 1. Suto vacha evam Krishna sakha Krishno bratra rajna vikalpita nana sankas padam rupam Krishna vishlesha karshita. Suta Goswami said, Arjuna, the celebrated friend of Lord Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna, over and above all Maj Yudhishthira's speculative inquiries. So what caused Arjuna's dejection was none of these material conditionings or material aspects that Yudhishthira Maj had presented, but this strong feeling of separation from Krishna. Arjuna's relationship, Krishna Sakha Krishna, Arjuna's relationship with Krishna was very, very strong, very powerful. Krishna loved to be with Arjuna and Arjuna loved to be with Krishna. And they had a very, very, very strong relationship. And that strong relationship of Krishna, when Krishna left this world, Arjuna naturally felt that strong separation from Krishna. And that strong separation from Krishna caused Arjuna to be dejected. Prabhupada in the purport says, right, being too much aggrieved, Arjuna practically became choked up, and therefore it was not possible for him to reply properly to the various speculative inquiries of Maj Yudhishthira. So Arjuna naturally was aggrieved and impacted and affected because his dear friend had left this world. If we consider when we hear a devotee has left this world, if we do not know that devotee, then we would, naturally feel some loss, or we would feel that this is unfortunate, and we may offer a prayer. If we knew that devotee and we had served with that devotee, then we would pray to Krishna and we would remember the devotee's activities and services. And we would naturally, be able to extract or glorify the wonderful services that the devotee was offering. And that means with more intensity and focus than in the situation where we did not know that devotee. Consider Arjuna, his relationship with Krishna was so strong. So strong as friends. So naturally, when Krishna left this world, Arjuna's heart was heartbroken. Because now his best friend has left this world. So no doubt Arjuna would feel that pain of separation. We see even when Krishna left Vrindavan, the gopis felt intense separation of Krishna. So we can experience separation when there's attachment. If there's no attachment, we cannot experience the pain of separation. In both cases, that means when there is no attachment, and when there is attachment, the solution to both situations is the same. And we're going to see that in the example of Arjuna. So Arjuna is intensely attached to Krishna, and Krishna is intensely attached to Arjuna. Arjuna is experiencing separation from Krishna, and he's going to remember Krishna. Similarly, we may not be intensely attached to Krishna. Therefore, we can remember Krishna to become attached to Krishna. So in both situations, remembrance of Krishna is key. Text 2. Sokena sushyad vadana rit saroja hata prabha vibhum tam eva smaran na shaknot pratibhashitam. Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. Therefore, his body lost all luster. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. Externally, it seems Arjuna is experiencing grief and the symptoms of grief. His mouth drying up, experiencing different materialistic, external material symptoms, but these are all due to his attachment to Krishna. Prabhupada, even in Bhagavad Gita, we see Prabhupada says Arjuna's symptoms. In the beginning, we see Arjuna experiencing these symptoms of his mind reeling, his mouth drying up, he's shaking, he's giving up the Gandiva bow. And Prabhupada writes this is due to excessive attachment, material attachment. We find the different 8 ecstatic symptoms of pure devotion, astika bhavas. These are also, these can also be produced on a materialistic platform. Therefore, Rupa Goswami in Act of Devotion, he does not use these 8 ecstatic symptoms to qualify someone on the stage of bhava. He gives additional symptoms that cannot be emulated on the material platform. So, for example, shivering. You can create shivering in your body just through control of your bodily limbs and muscles. You can tear. There are people who practice just tearing to fake their symptoms of love of God. Or you can try onions. Onions may also get you to tear, right? So materialistic, you can tear due to material circumstances. And Rupa Goswami does not use that as a sign of pure devotion. So crying incessantly could be, but is not a definite sign of pure devotion. For example, Rupa Goswami says that using one's time 24 hours a day, that is a sign of pure devotion. Now that you cannot fake. You can't fake that. Somebody has to, if somebody is with you 24 hours a day, they can clearly see when you are fully engaged or when you are not. So you can't pretend 24 hours a day, every single day, to be engaging Krishna's service. So Arjuna began, now remembering the Supreme Lord, he is going to start remembering, is going to start narrating, is going to reflect on how Krishna was involved in their lives in so many situations. Text 3. Krichrena samstabhya sucha paninam ripya netrayo parokshena samundada pranayokt kantya katara. With great difficulty, he checked the tears of grief that smeared his eyes. He was very distressed because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and he increasingly felt affection for him. It's interesting that pure devotion to Krishna is ever increasing. When you with Krishna, it increases your affection. And when you separated from Krishna, it increases affection. And on the spiritual platform, there is no limit to this, to the devotion that we can offer, to the affection we can offer to Krishna. It's not like, yes, now I have loved Krishna. No, there is no question of, now I have loved Krishna. It is, in fact, one will feel that my love is increasing and I can offer more and more love. And Krishna's capacity to embrace or accept that love is also unlimited. So a devotee's capacity to keep offering love and Krishna's capacity to keep receiving love is eternal. And that is why a devotee will never feel saturated. He will never feel, okay, I've done enough. He will always feel, I've never done enough. I've never loved Krishna enough. I can keep loving Krishna. I can keep serving Krishna. Anandam Buri Vardam, increasing ocean of bliss, which is coming from this aspect of eternally loving Krishna. There is no ceiling to how much you can love Krishna, to what extent you can love Krishna. Therefore, when we practicing Krishna consciousness seriously and sincerely, we will find that every single day we are feeling more excited, more rejuvenated, more enthused, more we experience the adventure of Krishna consciousness and loving Krishna more and more. It's not like, oh yes, I just went last week to the Sunday program and the previous week and now I have to go again. No. If one is focused and connected properly to Krishna, to the process, yesterday would not be the same as today. The experience would be greater and greater. Like we hear sometimes devotees, they say, oh yeah, the old good days, the good old days. Well, that is not the proper aspect in Krishna consciousness. Why? Because firstly, Krishna is never yogan. He's ever fresh and youthful. Krishna is more beautiful than yesterday. Krishna, in fact, Krishna is more beautiful than the last second that passed. So if Krishna is more beautiful, more attractive than the last second, then that means that this second should be even better than the previous second. what to talk about the old good days. Similarly, the pure devotees' offering of love is increasing, which means it's greater on this second than the previous second. So in this way, we see that on a Krishna conscious platform, on a Krishna conscious level, the future should be even more blissful, more exciting, and more nectarian in relation to Krishna. If we're not experiencing that, then that means we need to readjust. We need to evaluate. We need to see. Just like if there's a railway track, and if that train starts to jump off that rails, it's going to meet in an accident. It needs to stay on the track. At times it may lift, but if it falls back on track, it'll be safe. So we also don't want to lift off the tracks of Krishna consciousness. There may be situations that get us off the track. We want to bring ourselves back onto track before we meet any major accidents. We want to keep on the track of Krishna consciousness. And what are the two tracks of Krishna consciousness? The two tracks of Krishna consciousness is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing the glories of Krishna, service to the deities. If hearing means hearing and preaching Krishna consciousness, and serving and worshipping the deities. As long as we are in these two tracks, Bhagavad Vidhi and Pancharatra Vidhi, as long as we are on these two tracks, then we are safe and we can continue on this path. And in this way, we will experience ever new, fresh Krishna conscious moments. We should also be praying. We should also be having the aspiration that Krishna, please allow me to enter deeper and deeper into the relationship, into chanting, into serving. And in this way, we will enjoy the process or experience the joy, because we obviously not, our motive is not that I want to enjoy the process. The motive is I want to serve Krishna. And by serving Krishna, we automatically will experience the joy. So that way, every single day, I really want to amplify my service to Krishna. Text 4. Sakyam maitrim sauridam cha saradya dishu samsmaran ripam agrajam ityaha baspa gada gadaya gira. Remembering Lord Krishna and his well wishes, benefaction, intimate familial relations, and his chariot driving, Arjuna, overwhelmed and breathing very heavily, began to speak. So Arjuna's relation with Krishna was not just as a friend. Here we see he's remembering Krishna as well-wisher, as the benefactor, in terms of family relationship, as a charioteer. So there were many relationships that Krishna had with Arjuna. So we can really appreciate that Arjuna and Krishna had a very, very, very strong bond. And therefore, naturally, the intensity of that separation was felt because of all these wonderful relationships. One time, Arjuna was taking rest, and Lord Krishna came into the room, and he was hearing that even when Arjuna is taking rest, his body, his consciousness is chanting Krishna's names. So such intensity, such affection, such love was there. Akinchana Krishna's Babaji Maharaj, when he was ill, doctor, Akinchana Krishna's Babaji Maharaj was Srila Prabhupada's godbrother. He was the first to join the Gaudiya Math when Srila Bhakti Maharaj sent an ad. Anyone who wants to chant 24 hours, they can come to the Math, to the temple. All they'll need to do is sit and chant. We will provide boarding, lodging, food, everything free of charge. So many people thought, wonderful, free food, free lodging, free boarding, everything. This is wonderful. So they came, and many came and they started chanting. And one exalted soul was Akinchana Krishna Babaji Maharaj. He also came. And after a few days, few weeks, few months, everybody disappeared. Because just to sit and chant and only chant, you cannot imitate that. And the only person that was left doing that was Akinchana Krishna's Babaji Maharaj. And that's all he was doing, chanting. That was the perfection. So when one time he was ill and a doctor came to diagnose his illness, so the doctor took a stethoscope and he put the stethoscope on his heart, and immediately he heard Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He took the stethoscope off. What am I hearing? Put it back, and he heard the holy name. So the holy name was infused in every part of his consciousness and being. Every part was chanting. We see even Gaur Krishna's Babaji Maharaj in the lavatory when he was chanting. He would sit in the lavatory so that he wouldn't be disturbed. And one police constable came to look for Gaur Krishna's Babaji Maharaj. So he knew that he generally chants in these lavatories. And one day he came and he heard in the lavatory the holy name being vibrated. So he thought, yes, he's in this lavatory. So he opened the door, and to his surprise, there was nobody sitting there. The bricks of that lavatory was vibrating the holy name of Krishna, due to the potency and the purity of the chanting of Gaur Krishna's Babaji Maharaj. So this is the power of devotion and attachment that these great souls have. So Arjuna also, while sleeping, every part of his body was resounding the name of Krishna, the attachment. So naturally, a very, very exalted personality would feel intense separation from Krishna. This loving bond causes attachment, causes pain when there's separation. But in the material world, separation causes pain. In the spiritual platform, on the spiritual platform, separation intensifies and increases love. It increases the attachment. Even though externally that pain is experienced, there's this sweet and sour experience. Internally, one is experiencing separation from Krishna, at the same time experiencing Krishna, because remembering Krishna in separation means Krishna is there. And if Krishna is there, then there is ecstasy. Prabhupada writes, the supreme living being is perfect in all relations with his pure devotee. Sri Arjuna is one of the typical pure devotees of the Lord, reciprocating in the fraternal relationship. And the Lord's dealing with Arjuna are displays of friendship of the highest perfect order. He was not only a well-wisher of Arjuna, but actually a benefactor. And to make it still more perfect, the Lord tied him into a family relationship by arranging Subhadra's marriage with him. And above all, the Lord agreed to become a chariot driver of Arjuna in order to protect his friend from warfare risks. And the Lord became actually happy when he established the Pandavas to rule over the world. Arjuna remembered all these one after another, and thus he became overwhelmed with such thoughts. So it's not just one relationship, such a variety of relationships. Practically in every relationship, we see Krishna wanting to be with Arjuna and strengthen the relationship. And from Arjuna's perspective, wanting to be with Krishna. And Krishna was always there. So we can only have a glimpse of appreciation of how wonderful it was for Arjuna to have Krishna in these different relationships. Because Krishna is no ordinary person. When we with wonderful souls, we naturally experience their wonderful association. Now consider Krishna, he is the most beautiful. So just to have the most beautiful personality and have a relationship with this most beautiful personality is ecstatic. Then Krishna is the most knowledgeable, the most intelligent. We see that the Pandavas were taking guidance from Krishna because they knew that Krishna is the most intelligent. Follow him, follow his advice, and you'll never fail. Krishna was all-powerful. Having someone who is all-powerful makes one completely fearless. Krishna at the same time was also all-renounced. We see when if the Pandavas deviated, Krishna would withdraw his mercy to purify them, to let them atone. So Krishna also showed all renunciation. Krishna was all wealthy. We see that in Dwarka. Can you imagine when the Pandavas visited Dwarka, how much appreciation, how much of the appreciation of Krishna just intensified, because Dwarka was an amazing city. Indraprastha was an amazing kingdom. And then Dwarka comes completely on a different level. And they weren't envious. It just intensified the appreciation that yes, this is Krishna. Just see how wonderful Dwarka is, his city, his kingdom. So in every facet, we see Krishna amplifying the attachment, appreciation, because Krishna is no ordinary personality. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. And Arjuna had such a wonderful relationship with Krishna. So without fail, when such an exalted, great personality leaves, Arjuna would feel that separation. And the only thing, the only solace is remembering Krishna. Similarly, like the gopis, the only solace was remembering Krishna. Text 5. Arjuna Uvacha. So now we're going to hear from Arjuna his remembrance of Krishna. And this is also very instructive for us. These purports that Prabhupada is going to share is also very instructive for us. from the remembrance of Krishna, we go and what Arjuna is going to remember. That is the key. He's going to remember certain pastimes, certain exchanges. And through those different exchanges, we're also going to hear the lessons that we need to imbibe in our Krishna consciousness. As Arjuna shares the different lessons, Prabhupada is going to, in the purport, elaborate some of those pastimes. Arjuna uvacha vanchito yam maharaja harina bandhurupina yena me paritam tejo deva vishmapamnam mahat. Arjuna said, O king, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus, my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. Now, Arjuna had first-hand experience of what he is sharing. And Prabhupada in the purport is going to expand this amazing principle of being empowered by the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 10:41, the Lord says, anyone specifically powerful and opulent in wealth, in strength, beauty, knowledge, and all that is materially desirable is to be considered but a product of an insignificant portion of the complete whole of my energy. So we know that all energies, all potencies, all facets of wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge that exists in creation is coming from Krishna. So how is that relevant to ourselves? Prabhupada continues, no one, therefore, can be independently powerful in any measure without being empowered by the Lord. Which implies that every single potency that you exhibit, every single talent that you exhibit, every single powerful skill, expert skill that you exhibit, it is not yours. It is coming from Krishna. You may have spent 10 years developing a skill, apparently with your blood and sweat. And then with that skill, you may become wealthy. So that in that state, one may think that it is my doing, my skill. It is all my doing, and I have become a self-made multi-billionaire. But that is not true. The skill that you acquired is ultimately a blessing. It's endowed by the Supreme. It is not on your own that you just got that skill. And because it is endowed by the Lord, then all credits need to also go, or rather needs to go, to the Supreme Lord. When the Lord descends to the earth along with his eternal, ever-liberated associates, he not only displays the divine energy possessed by himself, but also empowers his associate devotees with the required energy to execute his mission of incarnation. So in example, Arjuna was empowered by Krishna. All these associates were empowered by Krishna to fulfill the desired purpose of Krishna appearing. It is also stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:5 that the Lord and his eternal associates descend to the earth many times. But the Lord remembers all the different roles of incarnations, whereas the associates by his supreme will forget them. Similarly, the Lord takes away with him all his associates when he disappears from the earth. The power and energy which were bestowed upon Arjuna were required for fulfillment of the mission of the Lord. But when his mission was fulfilled, the emergency powers were withdrawn from Arjuna because the astounding powers of Arjuna, which were astounding even to the denizens of heaven, were no longer required. And they were not meant for going back home, back to Godhead. Krishna appears, empowers, and that was the reason why he came. Now he returns back to the kingdom of God, back to home, back to Godhead, and his associates also have to return. And because the mission was completed, the powers were also withdrawn. Because the mission was completed. And they also don't need, like in Arjuna's case, he doesn't need the powers that he had to go back to God. So therefore, Krishna withdrew his powers. Now we may say, well, Arjuna still had his Gandiva bow. He still knew, he had skilled, he had trained, he had practiced archery for years. So the skill is still there. His Gandiva bow is still there. His arrows are still there. His strength, bodily strength is still there. You know, he had full focus and concentration of his mind. Yet, he was defeated by some coward man. Arjuna was shooting arrows, trying to defend, and his arrows were futile. Can you imagine what a, what a state, what an experience. Somebody who was so expert at archery was completely defeated by coward men, and his arrows were like practically impotent. It's like he's shooting and the arrows like land, a few meters, and he's thinking, what is going wrong? Gee. And the Gandiva is perfect, his arrows are perfect, his health is perfect, everything is fine. What's happening? Yet the arrows just not doing anything. It was a clear graphical experience. Something's not right here. It's not my Gandiva, it's not the arrows, it's not me, it's not, my health, my focus is here. What's wrong? It's because the potency of that ability was withdrawn by Krishna. It was not required. And Krishna wanted to show that it was him, it was Krishna's presence that allowed Arjuna and the Pandavas to achieve everything they achieved. Then Prabhupada says, if endowment of powers and withdrawal of powers by the Lord are possible even for a great devotee like Arjuna, or even the demigods in heaven, then what to speak of ordinary living beings who are but figs compared to such great souls? Arjuna was given empowerment, and Arjuna experienced withdrawal of empowerment. It was not Arjuna's powers. It was not Arjuna's abilities. It was Krishna empowering and disempowering. And if that is the situation with the pure devotees, then how can fig-like ordinary living beings be proud of their achievements? I have done this. I have built this. I have dot, dot, dot. No, Krishna has allowed you, dot, dot, dot. Krishna has empowered you, dot, dot, dot. By the mercy of Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, you have achieved and you are able to do whatever you are able to achieve. It is not you. The pure devotees, they have this understanding and realization. It is Krishna. Therefore, when all credits are due, are given, it is due and given to Krishna, to the spiritual master, to the Vaishnavas. No credit is really taken. And we see Srila Prabhupada as a perfect example, never took credit. Prabhupada said, if there is any credit due to me, it is that I simply followed the instructions of my spiritual master without deviation. I did not compromise. I tried to follow the order. I have faith in the holy name and I follow the order of my spiritual master. That's the credit. But otherwise, it is all the blessing of my spiritual master. And we see Srila Prabhupada's consciousness in regard to this, that even all his disciples, Srila Prabhupada saw that his spiritual master is sending me, these disciples. Therefore, Prabhupada took care of his disciples like they are the property of his spiritual master. Prabhupada took care of all the resources that he received, perfectly understanding that these resources are sent to me by Guru and Krishna. Never thinking it is my ability and my expertise. I was able to preach and I was able to do this. And therefore, because I was able to do it, then I am the rightful enjoyer of all the resources and all the results. No. If we have that consciousness, Krishna will teach us very, very clearly. Like in Arjuna's case, I'm Arjuna, I'm powerful, I have my Gandiva bow. Krishna taught him, nope, you can't even protect yourself from some coward boys with sticks. So Arjuna realized very, very clearly. We know even the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the events that transpired, it was only by Krishna's mercy that they were victorious. And Arjuna is going to share these different pastimes. So Prabhupada concludes, the lesson is, and this is the lesson we need to get. The sooner we get this lesson, the easier our Krishna consciousness will be, the more it will flourish. If not, it'll become more and more challenging. We will have to go through the school of hard knocks. So the lesson is, therefore, that no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. The same man should rather feel obliged to the Lord for such benedictions and must utilize such powers for the service of the Lord. Such powers can be withdrawn at any time by the Lord. So the best use of such powers and opulence is to engage them in the service of the Lord. Such a wonderful lesson. I'm going to read it again. The lesson is, therefore, that no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. It is not your powers. It is Krishna's. And if it is Krishna's, offer it to the rightful owner. The same man should rather feel obliged to the Lord. So we should be grateful. We should be thanking Krishna. We should, if we are able to offer any service due to the abilities we have, we should feel obliged to the Lord for benedicting us with the ability, with the potency, with the skill, with the knowledge. And while being grateful, we must utilize such power for the service of the Lord. Such power can be withdrawn at any time, and we should not be naive of this fact. Krishna can immediately take away the potency, the powers. Purnika Musika Baba, Prabhupada gave the example of the mouse that came to the sage. And the mouse came to the sage and said, please help. And the sage said, what's the problem? And the mouse said, well, I'm being attacked by the cat. Okay, so what can I do for you? So please make me a cat. Okay, I'll make you a cat. So now the mouse became a cat and was not being attacked by the cat anymore. But the cat came to the sage and said, oh, I have another problem. And the sage said, well, what's the problem now? Well, I'm being attacked by the dog. Okay, what can I do for you? Please make me a dog. So then the cat, the rat or the mouse who became a cat now became a dog. And in this way, Robert writes, the nature of the material world is that one animal is more powerful than other animals. It's just the nature of creation. Eventually, this rat who became a cat, who became a dog, who became another animal, eventually came to the sage and said, I want to become a lion. Because each animal was attacking and eventually said, I want to become a lion. So then sage said, okay, Tatastu, you become a lion. As soon as the mouse became a lion eventually, the lion was thinking, maybe I should eat the sage. And the sage said, oh, you want to eat me? The same person who was helping you, empowering you, and giving you, transforming your form to protect you and help you. Now you want to eat that same person? Become mouse again. So back to mouse. So Prabhupada writes, the sage can give you a higher form, and the sage can make you into a lower form. Similarly, Krishna can empower you, and Krishna can disempower you. So we should always have this in mind, that yes, Krishna can withdraw the powers that he gives us at any time. Therefore, so the best use of such power and opulence is to engage them in the service of the Lord. Text 6. Yasya kshana yogi yogo yasya kshana viyogena lokoya priya darshana uktena rahito yesha mritaka projyate yatha. I have just lost him, whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void, like bodies without life. Truly speaking, without Krishna consciousness, this is the state. The universes are unfavorable. No matter how materialistically, how externally, how superficially opulence, the material universes look favorable, but it is completely unfavorable because Krishna is not there. And we would experience the void. We may have so many facilities, so many resources. Minus Krishna, it is void. That is why you see that those without Krishna consciousness, even though they may have all material opulences, will commit suicide eventually. Because Krishna is not in their life. On the other hand, if Krishna is in your life, you may have no facility. You may be in a very unfavorable situation. But because Krishna is in your life, you will feel the shelter, the security internally. Externally, they may apparently seem you will experience a turmoil, but internally, you are secure. There's stability, like the deep ocean. On the surface of the ocean, you see the waves, and the waves basically disturbing the surface of the ocean. But deep within, there is stability. So like that, we experience the stability of life when Krishna is in our life. Arjuna was experiencing the stability when Krishna was there. Now that Krishna has left, then that separation, even for a moment, causes instability, which Arjuna is naturally experiencing. Prabhupada writes in the purport, factually, for a living being, there is no one dearer than the Lord. The Lord expands himself by innumerable parts and parcels as Swamsha and Vibhinamsha. Paramatma is Swamsha part of the Lord, whereas Vibhinamsha parts are the living beings. As the living being is the important factor in the material body, for without the living being, the material body has no value. Similarly, without Paramatma, the living being has no status quo. Similarly, Brahman or Paramatma has no locus standi without the Supreme Lord Krishna. This is thoroughly explained by Bhagavad Gita. They are all interlinked with one another or interdependent factors. Thus, the ultimate issue, the Lord is the summum bonum, and therefore the vital principle of everything. So without Krishna, we're nothing. With Krishna, we're everything. We need to bring Krishna more and more into our lives. And we need to keep Krishna always in the center of our life. Then everything is perfect. Krishna is the summum bonum, the stratum, the basis of everything. Without Krishna, there is no foundation. And without foundation, there is no growth. There is no expansion. Nothing can be built without Krishna as the foundation. So we need to understand that Krishna is the foundation. Krishna is holding everything together. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that like the pearls are strung on the thread, the thread is keeping all the pearls intact, even though you can't see the thread. So Krishna is the basis, the foundation, the summum bonum of everything. And we need to realize that, like Arjuna, realizing it very clearly. So now Arjuna begins to remember Krishna as the foundation, Krishna as the empowering agent, Krishna as his well-wisher, friend, benefactor, charioteer, Krishna meaning success. And without Krishna, life is void. So text 7. Yat samshrayad drupa padagahem upagatanam rajnam swayam varamukhe smaradu dur durmadanam tejoritam kalu maya bihatas chapmatsya sajkritena danusadegata cha Krishna. Only by his mercy, only by his merciful strength was I able to vanquish all the lusty princess assembled at the palace of King Drupad for the selection of the bridegroom. With my bow and arrow, I could pierce the fish target and thereby gain the hand of Draupadi. So now Arjuna is reflecting, how did he win Draupadi's hand? It wasn't his ability. Externally, oh yeah, just say Arjuna won Draupadi's hand through his expertise and mastery. But Arjuna is reflecting only by his merciful strength. So it is Krishna who made it happen. So he's seeing Krishna's hand, he's reflecting and he's seeing Krishna's hand in all the different events. Similarly, we also have to see Krishna's hands in all that happens in our life. Prabhupada's purport. Draupadi was the most beautiful daughter of King Drupad. And when she was a young girl, almost all the princesses desired her hand. But Drupad Maharaj decided to hand over his daughter to Arjuna only, and therefore contrived a peculiar way. There was a fish hanging on the inner roof of the house under the protection of a wheel. The condition was that out of the princely order, one must be able to pierce the fish's eye through the wheel of the protection, and no one could be allowed to look at the target. On the ground, there was a water pot in which the target and the wheel were reflected, and one had to fix his aim towards the target by looking at the trembling water in the pot. Maharaj Drupada well knew that only Arjuna or alternately Karna could successfully carry out the plan. But still, he wanted his hand, he wanted to hand his daughter to Arjuna. And in the assembly of the princely order, when Drishtadyumna, the brother of Draupadi, introduced all the princes to his grown-up sister, Karna was also present in the game. But Draupadi tactfully avoided Karna as the rival of Arjuna, and she expressed her desires through her brother Drishtadyumna that she was unable to accept anyone who was less than a Kshatriya. The Vaishyas and the Sudras are less important than the Kshatriyas. Karna was known as the son of a carpenter, a Sudra. So Draupadi avoided Karna by this plea. When Arjuna, in the dress of a poor Brahmana, pierced the difficult target, Arjuna was astonished. And all of them, especially Karna, offered a tough fight to Arjuna. But as usual, by the grace of Lord Krishna, he was able to emerge very successfully in the princely fight and thus gain the valuable hand of Krishna or Draupadi. Arjuna was hesitant. Arjuna was lamentingly remembering the incident in the absence of the Lord, by whose strength only he was so powerful. So here we see Draupadi, Arjuna winning Draupadi. That was the mercy of Krishna. You could just consider, if you're looking at the reflection and hitting a target, looking at the reflection, when you see the reflection, you will see the opposite. You can do a test. In the morning, you take your toothbrush and see in the mirror and see which hand you have the toothbrush and see which hand in the reflection the toothbrush is. If you're holding the toothbrush in your right hand, you'll see that in the reflection, it's in the left hand. So that means that Arjuna had to look at the reflection And while looking at the reflection, Arjuna had to pierce the eye, a very difficult target. And yet it was, yes, yet it was, he was able and experienced to do that by the mercy of Krishna. So perfect example. He's not thinking it is me and it is my powers, but it is by Krishna's mercy that I was able to do this. Text 8. Yat sannidavaham ukandavam agnayedam indram chasmarana ganam tarasa vijitya labda sabamaya krita bhutas shilpamaya digbyo haram ripatayo balim advarete. Because he was near me, it was possible for me to conquer with great dexterity the powerful king of heaven, Indradev, along with his demigod associates, and thus enable the fire god to devastate the Kanda forest. And only by his grace was the demon named Maya saved from the blazing Kanda forest, and thus he could build our assembly hall of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of the Rajasuya Yagya and paid you tributes. Purport. The demon Maya Danava was an inhabitant of the forest Kandava. And when the Kanda forest was set on fire, he asked protection from Arjuna. Arjuna saved his life, and as a result of this, the demon felt obliged. He reciprocated by building a wonderful assembly house for the Pandavas, which attracted the ordinary attention of all state princes. They felt the supernatural power of the Pandavas, and thus, without grudge, all of them submitted and paid tribute to the emperor. The demon possesses wonderful and supernatural powers to create material wonders, but they are always disturbing elements of society. The modern demons are the harmful material scientists who create some material wonders for disturbance in the society. For example, the creation of nuclear weapons has caused some panic in human society. Maya was also a materialist like that, and he knew the art of creating such wonderful things. And yet Lord Krishna wanted to kill him. When he was chased both by the fire and by the will of Lord Krishna, he took shelter of such a devotee as Arjuna, who saved him from the wrath of the fire of Lord Shri Krishna. Devotees are therefore more merciful than the Lord, and in devotional service, the mercy of a devotee is more valuable than the mercy of the Lord. Both the fire and the Lord ceased from chasing the demon as soon as both of them saw that the demon was given shelter by a devotee as Arjuna. This demon, feeling obliged to Arjuna, wanted to do some service to show his gratefulness, but Arjuna declined to accept anything from him in exchange. Lord Shri Krishna, however, being pleased with Maya for his taking shelter of a devotee, asked him to render service unto King Yudhishthira by building a wonderful assembly house. The process is that by the grace of a devotee, the mercy of the Lord is obtained, and by the mercy of the Lord, a chance to serve the Lord's devotee is obtained. The club of Bhimsang was also a gift of Maya Danava. So a very wonderful example how Maya Danava took shelter of Arjuna and was protected both from the fire and the chakra of Sudarshan Chakra of Krishna. And Prabhupada writes very, very beautifully that the devotees are more merciful than the Lord, and in devotional service, the mercy of a devotee is more valuable than the mercy of the Lord. So, because of this wonderful relationship that the Lord has with his devotees as Bhakta Vatsa, then the devotee's position is exalted. And because the devotee's position is exalted, naturally we should be very, very careful how we interact with devotees. We want to interact with devotees favorably. We want to interact with devotees to bring out their mercy, their compassion for us, their blessings for us. When we get the blessings, the wishes of the devotees, naturally we get the blessings of Krishna. So this example of Maya Danava is a very, very perfect example of how he had taken shelter of Arjuna and was protected. And from that protection, he wanted to offer and be grateful. And Krishna, Arjuna was a Kshatriya, so Arjuna was doing his duty. But Krishna, told Mayadanava to build this beautiful assembly hall. And Mayadanava graciously built this beautiful assembly hall and fulfilled his gratitude in this way. 9. Yatte jasan vipashiro nigrim aham makartam aryo nujastava gajayuta sattva viryam tena rita pramata nata makaya bhupam yanmo chitastad anayan balim advarete. Your respectable younger brother who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace, Jarasan, whose feet were worshipped by many kings. These kings had been brought for sacrifice in Jarasan's Mahabhairavya Yagya, but they were thus released. Later, they paid tribute to your majesty. So now Arjuna is remembering how Bhima was able to defeat Jarasan, who was practically he was immortal in the sense that nobody could defeat him because nobody knew how to kill Jarasan. Prabhupada explains about Jarasan's life and how Krishna intervened to kill Jarasan. Purport: Jarasan was a very powerful king of Magda, and the history of his birth and activities is also very interesting. His father, King Brihadrata, was also a very prosperous and powerful king of Magda, but he had no son. Although he married 2 daughters of the king of Kashi, being disappointed in not getting a son from either of the 2 queens, the king, along with his wives, left home to live in the forest for austerities. But in the forest, he was benedicted by one great rishi to have a son, and he gave him 1 mango to be eaten by the queens. The queens did so and were very soon pregnant. What the queens did was, when the king gave them the mango, they cut the mango in half, and each one ate the 1 half. The king was very happy to see the queens bearing children. But when the ripe time approached, the queens delivered 1 child in 2 parts, 1 from each of the queen's wombs. The 2 parts were thrown in the forest, where a great she-demon used to live, and she was glad to have some delicate flesh and blood from the newly born child. So we can imagine, because they had split the mango, then the body came in 2 halves to the respective queens. And when the king saw the 2 halves, naturally being disgusted, he threw the child in the forest. So they didn't follow the sages' instruction that, give the mango. So you had to, one queen had to eat the mango. So when this demon saw, out of curiosity, she joined the two parts, and the child became complete and regained life. The she demon was known as Jara, and being compassionate on the childless king, she went to the king and presented him with the nice child. The king was very pleased with the she demon and wanted to reward her according to her desire. The she demon expressed her desire that the child be named after her, and thus the child was surnamed Jarasandha, or one who was joined by Jara, the she demon. In fact, this Jarasandha was born as one of the parts and parcels of the demon Viprachiti, the saint by whose benedictions the queens bore the child was called Chandra Kaushika, who foretold the child before his father Brihadrata. So Jarasandha naturally was conceived in an extraordinary way, and because he was combined by Jara, named Jarasandha, even when he was split in two, his body would come back together. This was why Jarasandha was extremely powerful. Nobody could defeat him in the whole world. And all the kings practically were at his feet. Since Jarasandha possessed demonic qualities from birth, naturally he became a great devotee of Lord Shiva, the Lord of all ghostly and demonic men. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva, and so also Jarasandha. He used to sacrifice all arrested kings before Lord Mahabhairava, Shiva, and by his military power he defeated many small kings and arrested them to butcher before Mahabhairava. There were many devotees of Lord Mahabhairava, or Kala Bhairava, in the province of Bihar, formerly called Magda. Jarasandha was a relative of Kamsa, the maternal uncle of Krishna, and therefore, after Kamsa's death, King Jarasandha became a great enemy of Krishna. And there were many fights between Jarasandha and Krishna. Lord Krishna wanted to kill him, but he also wanted that those who served as military men for Jarasandha might not be killed. But he also wanted that those who served as military men for Jarasandha might not be killed. Therefore, a plan was adopted to kill him. Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna, Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna together went to Jarasandha to dress in the dress of poor brahmanas and beg charity from King Jarasandha. Jarasandha never refused charity to any brahmana, and he performed many sacrifices also. Yet he was not on par with devotional service. Lord Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna asked Jarasandha for the facility of fighting him, and it was settled that Jarasandha would fight with Bhima only. So all of them were both guests and combatants of Jarasandha, and Bhima and Jarasandha fought every day for several days. Bhima became disappointed, but Krishna gave him hints about Jarasandha's being joined together as an infant, and thus Bhima dissected him again and so killed him. All the kings who were detained in the concentration camps to be killed before Mahabhairava were thus released by Bhima. Feeling thus obliged to the Pandavas, they paid tribute to King Yudhishthira. So here we see the picture, whenever Bhima would dissect the Jarasandha, he would fling the two pieces of his body, and the two pieces will come back. So Krishna splits this twig, and when he splits it, he throws the one piece on the opposite side and the other on the opposite side, giving Bhima the hint that don't throw them on the same side, throw them in the opposite side. And because of this, Jarasandha never came back together and was killed. So here we see how Krishna Arjuna is seeing that this was Krishna's arrangement. Otherwise, it would be impossible to kill Jarasandha. But because Krishna intervened, because of Krishna's mercy, Krishna's guidance, they defeated Jarasandha. Text 10. Patya yes tavadi makka klapta mahabhiksheka sluggish tacharu kabaram kitavai sabayam sprishtam vikirya padayo patitashrumukyam yasta shriyo krita hetasha vimukta kesha. It was he only who loosened the hair of all the wives of the miscreants who dared open the cluster of your queen's hair, which had been nicely dressed and sanctified by the great Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. At that time, she fell down at the feet of Lord Krishna with tears in her eyes. So now he's remembering Draupadi and how Draupadi was saved, and Krishna administering the reaction to all the wives of those that were involved. Queen Draupadi had a beautiful bunch of hair, which was sanctified in the ceremonial function of Rajasuya Yagya. But she was lost in a bet. Dushashan touched her glorified hair to insult her. Draupadi then fell down at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna decided that all the wives of Dushashan and company should have their hair loosened as a result of the battle of Kurukshetra. Thus, after the battle of Kurukshetra, after all the sons and grandsons of Dhritarashtra died in battle, all the wives of the family were obliged to loosen their hair as widows. In other words, all the wives of the Kuru family became widows because of Dushashan's insulting a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord can tolerate insults upon himself by any miscreant because the father tolerates the insults from the son, but he never tolerates insults from his devotees. By insulting a great soul, one has to forgo all the results of pious acts and benedictions also. So here we see another example, Krishna protecting Draupadi's chastity when she was being disrobed, and Krishna not appreciating the insult that was committed to Draupadi, the Pandavas, and administering the reaction. We see how even Duryodhan was insulting Krishna. We see Shishupal was insulting Krishna. But Krishna, he was accepting those insults. But whenever Krishna's devotees, pure devotees, were insulted, Krishna would not tolerate. And Krishna would immediately administer the reaction. And here Srila Prabhupada concludes that by insulting a great soul, one is to forgo all the results of pious acts and benedictions. So one becomes a great loser. And one loses so much if one offends a devotee. So again, the warning is there. We should be very, very careful of how we interact with Krishna's associates, Krishna's devotees, Krishna's dear associates. So anyone that's dear to Krishna, we should be very, very careful. Even ordinary living beings who are dear to Krishna, we should be very respectful to them. And in this way, protect our devotional creeper. Otherwise, our devotional creeper can be lost and all our pious credits and benedictions. And this concludes the first 10 verses of the 15th chapter. Thank you very much. Kantrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande. So we have a few minutes You can take any questions or comments anyone has. Afana Prabhu says here to leave. I highly appreciate the idea that it's by Krishna as enabler that one can become successful or not. I imbibe more in Prabhupada warning or lesson to learn that Krishna empowers and disempowers. I believe I'm in that experience of kind of being disempowered, but I admire and I admire and am accepting as it draws me closer to depend on the infinitesimal power of the Supreme Personality. No longer I my sense if itself success, and it unfolds each time I'm making association. Yes, Krishna will put us in situations. He'll put us in disempowering situations, even though we ourselves would not be the cause of the disempowerment. Krishna will put you in a disempowering situation to bring out the dependence on him. And as soon as we depend on Krishna, then Krishna can empower us again. So Krishna would do this. The lessons that are there in the Bhagavatam are there for us to imbibe and mold our lives. And Krishna will use the material world as the playground to test us and put us in different situations to see, are we living and are we remembering and we living these instructions? And we may go through cycles, we may go through situations where we're hearing the Bhagavatam and we hearing these lessons and we think, wow, far out, wonderful lesson. And then we may forget the lesson. Or we may hear the lesson and next week we may, say, yes, we need to remember this beautiful lesson. It's an amazingly, we may write it down, we may remember it. But when the time comes to apply the lesson, we may not remember and apply it. Or we may write it down, we may reflect on it, we may learn it. And when a situation transpires, we may act on it. So in this way, Krishna, or it could be another scenario. We may remember the lesson, but then later we forget the lesson. Then we have an experience where we may remember but not apply the lesson, and then later reflect back and say, oh yes, now this makes sense. I should have applied myself like this. So we may go through these different scenarios or situations. Either way, it's a growing experience. Krishna will never forsake us. Krishna will never crucify us. Like if you don't surrender, then you're eternally condemned. No, Krishna is our well-wisher. Krishna is very kind. So he will give us an opportunity. We will always have an opportunity again and again and again. Just consider how many births we have taken, billions and billions and billions of births in separation of Krishna. And still Krishna has never forgotten us. Still Krishna has never forsaken us. Still Krishna sends his pure representatives and makes arrangements to keep us connected, to remind us. So Krishna will never, ever forsake us. No matter where we go, whether we go in a body of a worm, in the stool, no problem. Krishna will be there as a super soul. Krishna will keep directing and guiding us. So therefore, we should have that encouragement and confidence in Krishna being there. And even if we do not remember these instructions, we should keep reflecting, keep associating with Prabhupada's books, and these instructions will slowly be reinforced into our memory and our consciousness. And by the practice of Krishna consciousness, one day we'll be applying them in our lives and making them part of our being. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for the wonderful class. Very interesting to hear about the topics of separation. We have a long way to go in being attached to Krishna and the holy name. Yes. And when we know that we have a long way, we naturally would continue because we want to go closer and be closer with Krishna. So, as Prabhupada says, with patience and perseverance, we should continue with greater and greater determination, serving the Supreme Lord, pleasing Srila Prabhupada, chanting our rounds nicely. In this way, hearing the glories of Krishna, not committing Vaishnava Parad, serving the devotees, serving the mission. And if we just consistently do this, then that time will come when our attachment to Krishna will become insane. So we just continue by favorable and good association. We help each other to stay on this path and continue. Also, nice reminder that we are all useless and insignificant, and all that we do or have is due to Srila Prabhupada's mercy, to whom all the credit goes. If we are ungrateful and puffed up, then we become mouse again. Yes, we have to be very, very, very careful again about this. No matter who you are, you could be Maharati, you will become mouse again. So yes, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we have been molded, we have been empowered. And if we become puffed up, then Prabhupada, Krishna can teach us a lesson. So very, very important to keep in mind. Hemavati Radhika says, beautiful nectar, so purifying to hear, very inspiring and such valuable lessons for us on our journey towards Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for explaining so nicely. We are very grateful. Thank you very much, Hemavati Radhika, for your feedback and appreciation. Nonetheless, says Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you for Krishna Katha. I really like the concept of inseparation. Remembrance of Krishna brings us closer to Krishna. Practically thinking back. There are some situations in my life that I know seem impossible to go through. And I have realized that I couldn't have done it. Krishna must have been there, because I still don't know how I went through it. But I accept that it must be Krishna, and my association with all the devotees that helped me. All glories to Krishna and all the Vaishnavas. Thank you. Yes. And it's true. We made, like yesterday I was sharing with some new guests, even if we don't accept Krishna and surrender to him, we have to accept that it is by his blessings and mercy that we do everything we do. For example, digesting our food. Without Krishna as the fire of energy, that digest the fire, I can't digest whatever I eat, whatever I like. It is by Krishna's mercy. The oxygen, it is by Krishna's mercy that I'm breathing, I'm living, I'm doing whatever I have to do. So the fruits and vegetables that Krishna grows through the earth, it's Krishna's mercy. So even as a non-devotee, I have to accept that it is by God's blessings and mercy that I survive. What to talk about all the other subtle experiences and challenges that I go through? If Krishna's hand is invisible, no doubt it is by Krishna's blessings and mercy. So we should always be grateful, always thank Krishna, thank the pure devotees, thank Srila Prabhupada, and in this way, with a grateful heart, continue to practice Krishna consciousness and surrender to the Supreme Lord, so that one day we may also experience, we may also be 100% attached to Krishna like Arjuna and the Pandavas, and also experience the separation when Krishna is not there, so that we never feel separated from Krishna. Through remembrance, through remembering his pastimes, we will be with Krishna. Thank you very much for everyone's kind attendance. We will meet again next week. Thank you. Kwantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai, Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol.